film is very challenging for ILM because it has so much more work than any other film. I mean, Phantom Menace was, 2,000 shots. This is the same 2,000 shots, but the complexity of the shots in this film are infinitely more sophisticated and ultimately more demanding on their talent.
The execution arena sequence was one of the more challenging sequences I had to deal with. We built a large-scale miniature for the archway that the creature comes out of. The archway itself is about 2 feet across, and then that became the background for the shot.
The Acklay as a creature was something the animators were all very interested in animating. They wanted to get into that creature because of the way that it was designed, the 6 legs and the fact that it could rear back up on its back 4 legs and strike at Obi-Wan. Is fascinating for animators to work out the logistics and the movement of a character like that.
The original sculpt of the creature represents just the outer surface. They built a rig that had all the muscles there on all the arms and all the soft tissue, and so you're building the underlying structure as well.
The flesh simulation team adds all the muscle jiggle in there, so if you look at it slowly, you'll actually see that when a leg hits down, you get a jiggle in the forearm.
You can see muscles tensing underneath the skin. You can see the skin sliding over the muscles. And that does a lot to make the creature feel more realistic.
In this particular shot in which we see Obi-Wan walking through a hallway, we see kind of a marriage between really traditional ways of doing visual effects, for instance, miniature work, blue screen work, and digital. The hallway was a miniature element, something that was physically built for the 13 shots of the sequence. It was something that we took the time to build with high detail. We also see all the clones eating from the right camera angle. So when we shot the shot before of the clones eating, we had 2 cameras. One for the specific shot of them eating as a close-up, and another one in which we put the camera really high up looking down because we knew that we had to put them in this shot. So we shot, 80 different passes of this actor eating.
Yeah, okay. Looks good.
Good. All right, we'll do the other 98. And then we shot Ewan McGregor with not a very good idea of what that environment was going to look like and what he was seeing.
What we did have were the voice actors who were providing the voices for Lama Su and Tan Wee, who are the 2 Kaminoans who were walking with him. We actually put the voice actors in these hard helmets with these extensions on top of their heads.
Oh, kitty.
So that it would remind Ewan of where he was looking.
Technology, and what it boils down to is a kind of safety helmet from a working site and a bit of cardboard.
You sit and you watch him and you almost believe that he's seeing them for real. He looks up and you can see him focusing on a character that isn't really there. We'll put it in later.
Have you seen the model? Or just her? The face. So that's going to be me.
Usually when you make a film, you shoot the movie and you cut the movie together, and what you shoot is what you've got to make the movie. What we're shooting here is basically just all the bits that they need to put in the film that they already planned and made on computer.
I was there as the animation director working with and talking to George about the Kaminoans and how they would move. I felt that we needed to go in the direction of more like sort of a fashion model's kind of a gait, the kind of the sachet that they have, to make them much more graceful than most of the other characters were animated in the movie, to make them more distinctive. The other aspect of the Kaminoans that was very important to me was their clothing. And we spent a great deal of time in the early startup on episode 2 working on digital clothing. There's a whole dedicated team that's put together for this because clothing was clearly something that needed to advance past where we got on episode 1. There's a realism there. The audience just naturally is taken into the scene because the clothing is as real as Ewan's clothing. And that's the really difficult part. So it's wonderful for me to be able to see all of those elements, shot 1.5 years, 2 years apart, all come together into one shot that tells a moment in the story on Kamino.
So this shot, we find Mace Windu and Ki-Adi-Mundi flying down in the attack gunship and talking to a commander of a group of clones.
The live action element of that in that particular shot is Mace and Ki-Adi-Mundi. Ki-Adi's wearing makeup and prosthetics, but they were shot blue screen,
Action.
jumping off of just a low platform, and then walking up and pantomiming to nobody.
And then we had another character that was actually played by a performer that we wanted to add later because he wasn't available when they shot the original play with Sam Jackson. So we went to another soundstage and shot wild a camera move on this performer jumping off another 2-foot box. And it's completely separate. The camera was wild, so then our compositor on the shot, Sam Edwards, had to do a lot of work to try and track him into place and get them all to match up. As with most of the Clone War, we really didn't have any background at all. So it was just going in there and basically having a blank canvas and saying, okay, now we have to fill all this up. So we were desperate to, like, okay, we need some sort of reality to pin us down and to help drive our computer graphics. So we went on a few days shooting stills in the Southwest to get the look that we wanted, and then we manipulated those, added some alien landforms to them.
For most of the Clone War shots, these were enormous logistic undertakings for the animation team. If you look at a shot like Mace Windu jumping off the ship, none of those clones are real, so they're all animated.
George was very keen on pushing the digital technology and said, okay, well, when we've got the clones in the suits, I want you to use a computer-generated clone. Well, I think the essence of getting this right is some of the motion capture. Jeff Light's motion capture team did some great work in putting together, on the soundstage, we'd get people in a suit and capture their motions and apply those to these clone troopers. And that added a real feeling of realism to the way they moved. We've got a lot of action going on. We're trying to give across this idea to the audience that this is where all the clone forces have landed and they're all getting ready to go into battle. And to get that sense of troop movement and that sort of thing, we had to have thousands and thousands of clones moving around in the background.
We had someone on the crowd moving in the back. We had someone animating the clones in the ship. We had a different person animating Yoda. We had someone else animating the hero clones. So you've got 4 or 5 animators already working on that shot. Then you have the technical directors who are doing the rendering and compositing, and then the compositors who make sure it all looks great.
And then to blend all that together, we had a bunch of dust elements, which we created in both computer graphics, and we also used some miniature elements that we'd shot on a soundstage. And that all adds the atmosphere and haze that makes it feel like it's a busy, dirty, real-life location.
At ILM, we're built on specialists, so we've got the best people in each department all working together. So shots like that, the actions themselves in that shot isn't very complicated, but it's bringing all the resources together and all the talents together to make one cohesive shot.
There was a scene in which we see Mace Windu go through a hallway into the Senate floor. That whole sequence came in really late in the production schedule, and so the environment had to be digital because we ran out of time. We couldn't do it any other way. Not a miniature, not a set. It's basically a virtual environment. So when we shot the blue screen with Sam, we marked down on the floor where the walls there because we didn't want the actors to run into the walls.
You have no idea what some of these things can look like or some of these things will be. So you just kind of, get out there and act like everything's normal.
Then we went into about 3 or 4 months of painting the set. It's basically the same thing as doing a real set. You go through the same steps. In other words, you build the set, you paint it, you light it in a specific way, and you go through production design the same way that you do with regular sets. It's basically a different way of thinking about set dressing. It allows you the flexibility to change the lighting, change the environment, because you're shooting elements completely separately from each other. This is a great tool for the filmmaker in that they can think and change their minds as many times as they want to.
I always wonder what the actor's response is going to be when they see this movie, because if you think about a sequence, say, Padme going through the big chompers and cutters in the droid factory, if you'd actually been there on the day when we shot that, Natalie was shot in a blue screen room with a blue conveyor belt that was moving along, jumping and diving around these things, and has no real idea that there's the machinery that's going to be added in later on.
There's like a sort of stamper that's like making the droids, and I get put on this conveyor belt, and I'm sort of dodging and running and just completely making stuff up. And then they painted stuff around me that looks like I'm like jumping through things and I look so brave.
This weird sense of being there but not being there, that is her on the screen, of course, but the world that she's standing in, whether it be Coruscant or a droid factory in Geonosis or standing in the middle of the desert, which she shot in Tunisia but has added in extra things at ILM, it must be disconcerting, but it also must be wonderful.
Doing the work on episode 2 was really exciting for me because it was a chance to work with George Lucas, and it was great because he has such a firm idea of what he wants. He had it all planned, he had a good set of animatics and storyboard, but he was also open to ideas and suggestions and just making it better.
George gets tickled, for technology and for trying new things.
It's a great challenge because you're constantly being asked to do things that are new and different that haven't been tackled before. So there's a lot of research and development and solving of problems that are part of it. And I enjoy that a lot.
There's nothing more thrilling or more fun for me than sitting shoulder to shoulder with George, showing him the work of a talented animation team, because we're creating a Star Wars universe with incredible characters on fantastic planets, working with creative genius on his 6 Star Wars movies. It's magical.
Una nueva aventura de la legendaria saga de George Lucas, La Guerra de las Galaxias, episodio